Very good. How is it that the American people should believe that the majority party has the ability to solve your complex issues when, number one, they don't pay attention to history, which was defunding this organization has not helped their constituents, but hurt their constituents? And let me add to that. The last time I checked, America is growing. So you were defunding your organization as we were ending up with more people, which means that you have more work, correct?
Correct. More population, more filers, more changes to the tax code, and more complexity in how the economy operates. 2010, when our budget reduction started, we never heard of PayPal, Venmo, all these, payment platforms. The gig economy changes, and it's great, but we have to invest and be ready to be effective tax administrators as the world changes. That's why it's important to keep our funding at pace.
I agree, and as the child of an IRS worker, I absolutely want to thank you for what you do, and obviously, I always must send love to my mama. I thank her for what she does for the American people as well. I'll yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back her time. The distinguished gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Timmons, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been over a month since the House Oversight Committee launched our impeachment inquiry into the Biden family's domestic and international business dealings to determine whether these activities compromise U.S. national security and, more importantly, President Biden's ability to lead. We've documented over $20 million in payments to Biden's from fees from Ukraine, from Romania, from China. The list goes on. There have also been many whistleblowers alleging improprieties on behalf of the federal government, what seems to be a two-tiered system of justice. So this committee's investigation is doing the job that the DOJ, IRS, and FBI were supposed to be doing. We initially were told there was no communication between President Biden and Hunter Biden about Hunter's business dealings. That was later determined to be false. Then we were told President Biden never communicated with Hunter Biden's business associates. That was determined to be false. Then we were told that President Biden did communicate with Hunter Biden's business associates, but it was only about the weather. That was probably my favorite one, also later determined to be false. Then we were told that President Biden may have communicated with Hunter Biden's business associates, and discussed business on multiple occasions. But President Biden never received a benefit. He said, "Show me the money." And we recently have direct evidence of a $200,000 payment from Jim Biden to his brother Joe. But this is the new one. That's just a loan repayment. And as the White House seeks to continue feeding the American people a narrative that the president has done nothing wrong, perhaps a little advice. Give this committee the loan documents, show us the interest rates, and provide evidence that $200,000 was transferred from President Biden to Jim Biden in the preceding months or years. Document this alleged offense. And if you can do that, then help us understand how it is ethical, legal, or at all appropriate for the president's brother to leverage the president's influence to get hundreds of thousands of dollars from a distressed company while dangling a possible bailout from a Middle Eastern investor. As the White House tries to show the American people that the president did nothing wrong, do not forget that the Oversight Committee has received thousands and thousands of pages of bank records, and fully expect thousands more as we uncover even more and more nefarious activities. This payment is the first of what I anticipate will be millions of dollars to the president. So now, to Commissioner Warfel, I simply have one question for you. Do you promise to act in a nonpartisan manner? Pursue justice no matter where it takes you?
I do.
Thank you. But between the Lois Lerner scandal and multiple whistleblowers alleging improprieties within the IRS, it seems we have a problem. And we need to restore the American people's faith in our institutions. The Oversight Committee is doing the job that the DOJ, IRS, and FBI refuse to do as it relates to Hunter and Jim Biden and possibly President Biden's activities. And we will continue to move forward, but we need your help to restore faith in our institutions. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Thank you very much. The gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses. Administrator Werfel, I also want to if you can pass along my thanks to everyone at the agency, especially the Taxpayer Advocate Service. My team back home has just been really impressed with working with the team, and really dedicated servants. I know it's not always an easy job. Just recently, a constituent of mine from the city of Huntington Park, her name was Maritza. She had reached out because of identity theft issues, hadn't received tax returns in 2021 or 2022. We worked with your office and the Taxpayer Advocate Service, and we're able to secure over $16,000 back to her. And this is a story that we hear over and over again in our office, and so that would not be possible without the team of workers that you have. And so I just want to thank you and remind folks that, yes, this is a hard business, but there's people working really hard to get folks their earned dollars back. So thank you for that. Now, I'm glad that we're having this hearing, and I know that the IRS obviously oftentimes faces a very difficult task. But we all know that the work you all do is very necessary, and we should all want every government agency to be as efficient as possible and work as effectively as possible. A better IRS means better customer service, means better refunds, it means a better economy. I think everyone recognizes this, and obviously when Congress passes a law, we should also be enforcing it. Enforcement is so important. It's something that I was very focused on when I was mayor of Long Beach, just before I got here about a year ago, and enforcement matters in the IRS. Now, I'm very glad that Congress and President Biden came together to fund the IRS Enforcement Division, especially to go after the very wealthy tax cheats that are very regular and very regularly are not paying their fair share in this country. The very rich should pay their fair share. If they do, we could reduce the deficit and inflation and fund better services that would all lead to this. And it's also very unfair, of course, the very rich, billionaires and millionaires cheat on their taxes and get away with it. So I want to just point this out here in this poster, and I think we've been discussing this a little bit throughout the hearing. This goes to show you the IRS enforcement, how depleted we've become just over between 2010 and 2018 in the enforcement budget, enforcement personnel, the overall audit rate. I mean, you see the impact that this can have on an agency. Now, Administrator Werfel, can you confirm that between 2010 and 2020, IRS enforcement funding was cut by 24% in inflation-adjusted terms?
That sounds right.
And I know the majority has made a lot of comments today, but this has also been a House majority that has decided to actively work against the IRS and work against additional funding. And this chart shows the impact that this has had. Now, the audit rate for the largest corporations and millionaires has plummeted. And this is who the majority, I believe, is working overtime to protect. It's to protect billionaires and millionaires who are cheating on their taxes, not working class people and middle class folks. And so this chart should be of concern to the agency, but it certainly should be a concern to the American public. Now, Administrator, is it correct also that the tax gap, which is the amount of taxes that are owed but not paid, comes to nearly $7 trillion just over the last decade?
Yes.
And more than a quarter of that comes from the top 1% bracket. Is that right?
I have very specific numbers on that. For example, in what I just mentioned, individuals that earn more than $500,000 associate with $40 billion of the tax gap. And then that's just from underreporting. And then when you add in underpayments, it's another $150 billion. So you're roughly at about $200 billion for just those individuals who earn more than $500,000.
Well, thank you for that. Now, the IRS investments are expected to raise $124 billion. That's because IRS couldn't hire the tax experts who can catch wealthy tax cheats. But now, of course, they can, and we need to be able to do more. Now, President Biden has promised to grow the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down. We need to take on tax cheats, especially those at the very top. Lowering the deficit is good, taxing the very wealthy and the rich is good, and ensuring that people pay their fair share of what they owe the government for the basic services that we all depend on as a country is also very important. I want to thank all of my colleagues for having this hearing. I want to thank both of you for your work, and I look forward to continuing ensuring that the very wealthy in this country pay their fair share. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Commissioner, there was a conversation with a member about how the IRS looked at, perhaps identified, but treated people who may be of color. Do you gain information about people and their ethnicity or their race?
We do not collect that information, no.
Then why would you have responded that you look at that and made decisions from that?
That's not my testimony.
What is your testimony?
My testimony is that a research group from Stanford University, using what's called imputed identifiers of race, because we have no race data in terms of taxpayers, identified not a disparate treatment, but a disparate impact, basically saying that on average, our audit algorithms are having the unintended consequence of having black families at a higher audit rate than non-black families. And this is an analysis where you're not using actual race data, you're using what's called imputed race data. So we don't collect race data and we don't plan to.
So you have made changes as a result of this.
Yeah, the goal is to adjust the approach and then working either internally or with external stakeholders, again, using an imputed race methodology, ensure that any efforts that the IRS is undertaking in audit are fair across all demographics, not just race.
So fair, if you are applying the law as it were, and you didn't know whether someone, their ethnicity, their race, you changed how you look at the law based upon some consideration.
I think we have a responsibility to do all of our operations in a non-biased way. There should be no disparate impact or treatment based on
But you were
political
following the
affiliation,
law.
race, age. Right, and so in following the law, I think our responsibility under the law is to make sure that IRS operations are carried out without a disparate impact on any particular minority population or political group. And so the type of study that Stanford did is helpful. It basically gives us an outside-in perspective and says, we've studied it, we don't have the race information, but we are able to impute race. And I think the Congresswoman entered the report into evidence, and so the methodology of how they imputed race is in the report. We looked at it and we said, yes, based on this analysis, we agree that the way we are selecting cases for audit is having a disparate impact. That would not be consistent with what we believe our responsibilities under the law are, which is to implement the tax code as fairly as possible across all demographics. And so we're making changes in the hopes that the next time this is tested, that the disparate impact no longer exists.
Find it very interesting. I will look at that because it seems like it's a threshold by which you would look at people. Is that more generally, specifically correct?
I don't think so. I mean, the first big step that we took was to just reduce the volume of audits for refundable credits, not related to any demographic, just a specific cut in volume. Because the researchers, and in that Stanford report that's now in evidence,
What would that figure be then? You went from this to what?
I can get you that data.
I am interested in that because I want to be realistic that I think you're entitled to set thresholds, and I want to be realistic about what the numbers are. I don't want us to find a way to where we might be discriminating or discriminatory. But I would be interested in what those threshold numbers were and what you've changed them to. On behalf of this subcommittee, as the chairman and the ranking member, Mfume, we want to thank both of you for taking time to be with us today. I want to thank you for taking time to speak with me the other day. I told you that we would try and be fair. I told you we would probably be prompt. I did not know that we were going to get off like this, but I just want you to know that I appreciate what you have done and taken the time here, and also from the GAO. Does the distinguished ranking member have any comments that he'd like to make? Distinguished gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for your guidance on this issue as we have spent a lot of time talking and trying to figure out a bipartisan method to get us to these hearings so that we could receive this testimony and have an opportunity to go over it, as we both want to, I think, without a doubt, make sure that going forward, IRS is more effective, not less effective. And while all members here have an opinion, it's really up to this committee to set the example. And Mr. Commissioner, I said before you've got a tough job. You really, really do. There are no silver linings, no magical bullets, and nothing else that's going to set this where we all want it to be on the right track, except hard work and dogged oversight. We do our oversight here, and we expect that you will do dogged oversight in your role. I can tell you that the last 7 months that you've been there have been very, very encouraging, and we hope that the information provided by GAO, which are not touch points but guideposts, will be taken seriously, but not only that, but reviewed periodically with GAO to find out if, in fact, things are indeed working. It's a tough road to hoe, but somebody's got to do it, and it looks like you're it, sir, because we recognize we can't do without the IRS in this country, and yet we all know that we want it to be better each and every year. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that it is properly funded to be able to do those sort of things. It's been on the record for some time now that IRS has improved customer service to our constituents. We all know it's not perfect. We still get those phone calls in our offices. Our staff still have worked for months and months to work at trying to mildly satisfy and bring about resolution in cases. But I'm glad to report that it's getting better. IRS is opening both permanent and pop-up taxpayer assistance centers to help communities. And trust me, sir, those are very, very needed. A lot of people don't know where to turn. They want to do the right thing by compliance and complying with the law, but they just need, in this instance, a helping hand. So I, look forward to talking more with the chair about this. We really believe that as the oversight body here, it's our function, but more important, our duty to try to find a way to get answers and to provide the larger American public with one sense and some sense. There's continuity here, but that there's also cooperation here as we try to move forward. Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of unanimous consent requests that I'd like to read into the record. I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this letter that is dated July 19th, 2023, from a coalition of more than 200 national, state, and local organizations and research organizations, including Texas Area United Way, RAISE Texas, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Hidalgo County, Texas, and the Michigan League for Public Policy to the IRS Commissioner in support of the IRS Free File Program.
Without exception.
I would also ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a Treasury Department press release entitled Filing Season 2003, a report card IRS delivered significantly improves customer service, and the IRS's strategic operating plan for 2023 to 2031, which outlines the organization's plans for implementing the $80 billion coming from the Inflation Reduction Act.
Without objection.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a statement from former taxpayer advocate Nina Olson, an accompanying letter dated June 21st of this year from the Executive Director of the Center for Taxpayer Rights, Nina Olson, to the Treasury Department and IRS Commissioner Werfel regarding the implementation of IRS's 2023 to 2031 Strategic Operating Plan.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Before I end this, I want to say that Mr. Mfume and I attempt to run this with an understanding about working with each other in a fair manner, not only to our members, but also to the witnesses that we ask to come and appear. We do expect them to appear. We do expect them to follow our guidance of working with each other. But when we end this hearing, we want to come down and shake your hand and thank you for being here. With that, and without objection, all members have 5 legislative days within which to submit material and additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. If there's no further business, without objection, subcommittee stands adjourned.